We normally end our academic year here at the Digital DJ Tips DJ School with a kind of AMA Your Questions podcast, where we talk about anything at all that our students want to raise. However, seconds before this recording, as I was looking through the questions that we've been asked ahead of time, I was floored by a question from one of our students, which really summed up in one or other form many of the questions that our students have been asking, not only over this academic year, but over the last 3 or 4 years, about the very future of DJing itself. And that is an open question, and there are no certain answers. And it's no surprise that digitization, the massive collapsing cost of entry to DJing, and then AI have utterly changed DJing forever. And literally it's been happening in a matter of 1 or 2 years, and it's only accelerating. So for this special final edition of the podcast, before we hit our summer specials and before we return with the usual format in September, we're going to spend the whole show looking at the very future of DJing. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to read out a comment I received from one of our students in our student group, and I'm going to read the whole comment in full. This is literally word for word. It's almost like John's written an amalgam of what our audience is really worried about at the moment, or at least what a segment of our audience is worried about. So let's go. I will read this whole thing out, and then because we're recording in front of a live audience of our students, we will have a debate about this for the next 30 or 40 minutes, and that will comprise this special end of term edition of the Digital DJ Tips Your Questions podcast, because the next one will be at the beginning of September. Okay, so here is the essay that I was sent. Hi Phil, I hope you're well, and I apologise for the long question. No, you don't need to apologise. I believe DJing has diminished in value over the last 10 years or so. The barrier to entry is now so low that new DJs appear constantly, many willing to work for next to nothing just to get gigs. Even worse, some venues actually expect DJs to pay for the opportunity to perform. Compared to the past, music is essentially available for free through streaming services or via illegally copied hard drives sold cheaply online. Years ago, our music collection was our identity and our most valuable asset. We spent years building it, investing thousands and hunting for records that made us unique. Technology has also changed dramatically. A pocket-sized controller today can do more than a $10,000 club setup from years ago. Back then, even entry-level DJ equipment was expensive, making it a significant investment. Learning the craft has changed as well. Today, anyone can access thousands of tutorials instantly and at very little cost. In the past, quality DJ education was rare and expensive. I personally attended a university level DJ course and had to pass both theoretical and practical examinations before qualifying. I'm not against technology or progress. In fact, I embrace innovation. However, the combination of an oversupply of DJs and an extremely low barrier to entry has turned DJing in many people's eyes into an unappreciated and often unnecessarily novelty practice rather than a respected profession. To make matters worse, streaming services can now automatically mix songs without gaps, and anyone can find a playlist for virtually any occasion with a simple search. As a result, many people no longer see DJs as an essential in the way they once did. My question then is this: how can we protect our craft and restore the value of professional DJing? How can we position DJs as skilled artists and professionals who create experiences rather than simply people who press buttons? What can we do as an industry and as individual DJs to make the profession respected again? Wow. That really is not a question if you've just woken up, is it? That goes deep. That's philosophy. That is a how can we make the future worth living in type question. However, we're going to tackle it today, folks, and we're going to have fun doing it. So I'm sure that as I read that out, many of our students have had thoughts. Please type those thoughts into the box, because there'll be a lot of people listening to the podcast who are having the same thoughts, who will appreciate you sharing your version of what they'll be thinking. So please do that. Meanwhile, I'm just going to give you a few thoughts of my own, because I've got some stuff I agree with you with, some stuff I don't agree with you with, and some things to get you thinking. So let's go right back to the very beginning here. You're talking about the fact that DJs are being paid peanuts and some are even paying to play. I need to tell you a home truth. It's pretty much always been that way. Certainly since I started DJing, and I've been DJing since the early 90s, since the first explosion of house music. It's a bit like, if you look into this, you'll find a real correlation. The world of being a plane pilot. So I read a book about the kind of pilots uncovered recently, and it was an American pilot talking about the hierarchy of pilots in the United States, where obviously everyone flies everywhere. And they were talking about the fact that the only jobs that really pay are the ones with the big airlines flying intercontinental, international flights, because all the small flights, all the flights between cities and between states are with smaller airlines that don't pay well. And it's at the point where once you've paid for your education as a pilot, and once you've kind of got yourself to the position where you can get these jobs, you really don't earn very much at all. But the airlines know that. And so being a pilot, because it's so glamorous and because people want to fly planes, has kind of become pay to play. Now, where have we heard that before, DJs? Because pilots are cool. Being a pilot's a cool thing to say. And that's just how it is. And so it's almost like actors, only the top 2 or 3% make any money and the rest just do it for love and for passion. It's the same with DJs, and I would argue it always has been. Now, it might have got worse, but that doesn't mean it was ever a place where you could just say you were a DJ, do the work, and suddenly be getting an awful lot of money for it. Now, you say that compared to the past, music is essentially available for free through streaming services and via illegally copied hard drives and so on. And I agree with you here. Years ago, our music collection definitely was our identity. It was hard to get the music you wanted. You worked very hard to find it. I was once interviewed for a book by a very good friend of mine called Dave Haslam, who wrote a few books on DJing and the history of DJing back in the day. And I remember saying to him, he said, what defines a good nightclub? What defines a good club night, rather, an event that people come to? And I said, it's the music. People will travel half the country just to hear the music that they love, or to even hear a record that they love. And it was true at the time. I remember having songs that I knew there were only 5 copies of in the world, like an acetate of something that had been given to me by the DJ who made it. And I knew it wasn't even on white label. They'd literally pressed it. An acetate was a kind of version of a song that you could only play 10 times before it wore out. They were on very, very brittle kind of shellac style vinyl. And our record collections went from that kind of stuff down through the very rare to the quite rare to the not many people have got it to the quite common to the, the normal stuff. But not only that, it was the combinations. It was the journey we could take. So we could have records that not many people had that were 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10 years old. People were playing records that they thought were new but weren't, because there weren't many of them around in the first place. So this whole scarcity of music was definitely something that allowed DJs to differentiate themselves, and also allowed events, club nights, promoters, scenes to differentiate themselves. You look back at the Northern Soul scene in the north of England, that was based around a type of soul music from the States that had finished a decade earlier. And yet those 7 inches defined a scene. There was a whole musical scene that was vibrant, that was basically based around crate digging DJs trying to find music that had already happened, from scenes that had disappeared. So that kind of thing is definitely gone. But there's no point crying over it, because it ain't coming back. And so I guess the question would be, how do DJs differentiate themselves in a world where we've all got the same music? Now, we could talk about that for a long time. A lot of the stuff we teach is about making your versions of music, or learning to hear things in music other people don't hear so you can do something new with it. But essentially, that is the question, isn't it? Now, you also say that technology has changed dramatically. A pocket-sized controller can do more than a £10,000 club setup. Well, actually, your phone can do more than a £10,000 club setup. And entry-level DJ equipment was very expensive, making it a significant investment. Now, what I read there is that you think that's a bad thing. Now, I'm going to push back at you here. You know, we are very privileged in the rich West to be able to afford DJ equipment. And anything which puts it into the hands of people with a love of music over the rest of the world, I'm all for. And frankly, that includes cheap access to music. So I don't have a problem with that. I think the more we can put DJing into the hands of more people, the more creative it becomes. And I'll tell you why. Because I truly believe that there is always room for greatness at the top. And so anyone who's really got something to say needn't worry about amateurs. Professionals always needn't fear amateurs. I think that's a rule of the creative arts. So I'm definitely pushing back on that. I don't mind that at all. You also say learning the craft has changed as well. And everyone can access a lot of training cheaply. Well, they can, of course. Nowadays, you can buy everything we've ever done, you know, and when we're on sale, you can get it for, you know, less than the price of one CDJ. So that's pretty cheap compared to years ago. Now, university courses teaching DJing were pretty damn rare back in the day. So fair play to you to getting on one. I would argue that DJing isn't something that needs a university course. DJing is something you learn on the job. And DJing's education should be about coaching. It should be passing on the skills. And you get those skills by going out and doing it at the same time as you're learning from everyone else. So I don't think you need a DJ education. But again, even if you did, you know, this idea that you get educated and you get a certificate and that means you're allowed to be a DJ, that doesn't work. It's an art, right? You don't need to get anything. No one's ever going to give you permission to be a DJ. So the idea that an education can buy you that permission, I think it doesn't apply to DJing. So I agree with you that DJing, as you say, in many people's eyes, is unappreciated and often unnecessary. But I think it's up to DJs to make it appreciated and necessary. And if what we do has become so devalued that a streaming service can just do it, then how can we change that? I think herein lies a little nugget of hope. Because if one thing AI has taught us, it's that AI doesn't care about you. AI can't develop a practice over time. AI doesn't try and get better at something over 5 years or 10 years. But most importantly, AI is not in the room with other living, breathing human beings. AI is cold and it's algorithmically driven and it's got no physicality at all. And so therein lies what DJs are good at. We are in the room, we do care. We have spent time with other human beings, not only at that gig, but at hundreds of gigs in the past as we get good at this game. We know in a way that AI doesn't what to do next and always will as human beings. And if we get to the point where our humanity is that devalued, we really have got a problem. So I think that this answers your question. How can we protect our craft and restore the value of professional DJing? I don't think it needs restoring. How can we position DJs as skilled artists and professionals who create experiences rather than people who press buttons? We create experiences. Now, if we're there saying, here's something I've made, this DJ set, this vibe, this thing I'm about to do, I don't care if you press buttons to do that. I don't care how you do it. If it works and you're the one who did it, total success. So I think we need to separate the things we're using with the experiences we deliver. But I totally agree with you. We need to be in the room because AI can't. We need to be with the other human beings creating the vibes. So I've just mentioned a bit earlier, a friend of mine, a DJ from Manchester, a guy called Dave Haslam. Funnily enough, I've got his book that we were clearing out the studio and I found a book he wrote called A Life in 35 Boxes. I literally just dug it out. He wrote this little pamphlet book where he talks about when he sold his 35 boxes of records and went digital. It's a really interesting read. Anyway, Dave said to me once, Phil, I think if you had to define DJing, if you had to define what makes a DJing, what makes a good DJ, it is someone who is good at transferring energy from the DJ to the dance floor. And he was talking about how a lot of DJs, just all they transfer is kind of boredom. That's not good enough nowadays. AI can do that for you. If you've got something you want to say with the music you're playing, and you're good enough to bring other people along for the ride, that's never going to be replaced. And there are DJs who do that. There are DJs who are skilled artists and professionals. I don't think DJing lost the respect of anyone. And I think people love great DJs. I just think a lot of people are doing it for other reasons. And there's a lot of not very good DJs out there. And you know what? I'm absolutely fine with that as well. DJing can be just a hobby. DJing can be something you do to unwind. It can be something you do for your mental health. Yes, it can be something you do to make little Instagram reels and TikToks, but it can also be something that brings a room of 2, 3, 4, 500 people along for the ride and gives them a night they'll never forget. And yes, it can also be a completely choreographed, no wires plugged into the back of the mixer, light video and, basically rock show, completely pre-programmed for a room. Well, it won't be a room, will it? It'll be an arena or a stadium of 50,000 people. And I think that's fine as well. So I think we just have to drop these little ideas that each individual person listening to this or watching this has about what an ideal DJ should be doing. Normally it's rooted in our first 10 nights out, and accept that it's a very broad church nowadays and that we can't stand still. We need to reinvent ourselves every 5 years. But here's a rule, so does everyone. If you're in business, your business better come up with some good new ideas every 5 years or so, or your history. If you are an artist, if you paint, if you draw, if you make music, if you play music, if you are anyone in the creative arts, you better have new ideas. I think it's no surprise that most people do their very, very, very best work, as in their most creative work, as in the work that puts a stamp down and says, this is who I am, when they are at their most creative, which tends to be in the first half of their whatever career they've had, because it's hard. And after that, they're just kind of treading over old ground. They might be doing stuff that's worthwhile, but as we know, it tends to be the first album that's great with a band. It tends to be the first releases that define a DJ, etc., etc. Now I'm going to go over and hopefully spend the rest of our time together here today talking to our fantastic students about this, because I can see a lot of comments coming in from all of them. So thank you very much, everyone who is commenting here. Let's just read a few of these out as well to get started. So we're going to start with Mark. Mark says this. Okay, so I do not agree that DJing has become devalued as an art form. Sure, there is more competition and that will drive competition, but like photography, everyone has a camera in their pocket now. And still professional photographers are much admired. I think it's the same with DJs. The more people that try the craft, the more they are likely to appreciate the level of skill, practice, discipline, and craft that are involved. And also, he adds as an aside, I think in Spain, it's a recognised profession. Oh yes, the Spanish do like to recognise, put some paperwork and licensing and bureaucracy around anything they can, God bless them. Right, okay, so you've touched on a point here, Mark, that I think is actually really useful and interesting. Let's bring this into the debate. You say the more people have a go at DJing, the more they are likely to appreciate the levels of skill, practice, discipline and craft. So some of you will know that I'm a very keen runner. I've been running all my life, and certainly for the last decade or so, I've been taking it pretty seriously. I've got quite good as a runner. But running in the last 5 years, let's say since COVID, has become a participation sport. There are more people out there running, entering marathons, entering races, entering ultra marathons, etc., like by a multitude more people than ever before. Does that mean that the runners at the very top of the game are somehow devalued? I don't think it does. In fact, I completely agree with you, Mark. Once you know a bit about it, you respect the people at the top even more. When I was 20, 21, I was the kid at school who couldn't throw or catch. I was half blind and I always got paired off with the PE teacher or put in goal, right? That was me. So as far as I was concerned, me and sport didn't go together. So before I was into running and all that, I was invited to play five-a-side football or soccer for you, or FIFA for you Americans. And I'm not patronising you, just saying it how I see it. And I was invited to play five-a-side football with some friends. And I actually really enjoyed it. Now I was not a fan of that game at all because I felt like it wasn't for me. Sport wasn't for me. I was the blind kid who couldn't throw and catch. And so I certainly wasn't interested in watching great athletes running around a field doing something awesome. But as soon as I played it, and realised actually I wasn't that bad. As soon as I played it, it all made sense to me. I understood what they were doing and I loved it. So I think you could have something there, Mark. If we're creating a generation of people who've all had a go at DJing, maybe that is the generation who will be attending the shows of the very best DJs coming through for another generation to come. And maybe this democratizing, maybe this opening up of DJing to everyone. And remember, we're going global here as well, because if you can get DJing for peanuts, then you're more likely to do it in places where you can't afford to spend more than that on it. If we are making DJing more widespread, more global, more easy to access, we could actually be safeguarding its future, not diluting or destroying it. It's a very, very good point. Thank you. So, here's a great comment, and this is, you learn something new every day about your community. This is from Mixmaster G, who some of you will know as the technical genius in our small community. Mixmaster G says, I am a private pilot, so I know what I'm talking about. Having a commercial pilot's license doesn't qualify you to fly any plane commercially as the first in command. You need to get a type rating for a specific plane, which involves putting in the hours, and that making the hours without being in command is what it costs. So yes, being a commercial pilot is already pay to fly. Well, there we go then. So the analogy holds up. Thank you very much for that. So Kesha says, I've always admired DJs, not just for their skill, but for the way they're able to craft narratives through music. And that in and of itself is artwork. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to give it a go, and while I'm not the best DJ out there, I'm certainly not the worst. I thank Questlove and Digital DJ Tips for helping me to see that well. We're in good company there. Thank you very much. I'll take the compliment fully there. Thank you. So DJing is an art form. I will be the first person to agree with you there. And it's not the same as producing music. Some of the best DJs I know are almost tone deaf, but they just know what's required next. And DJing essentially is about knowing what's required next every 90 seconds, every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, whatever. And at the same time, you need to know how to convey what you're feeling about what you're doing to the dance floor. And so if you can combine that kind of love of being the person doing that stuff with the music you're playing, it's very different to producing music. It's very different to being in a band. It's very different to any other musical form. It's probably closest, and the fact that the thing I'm about to say is so different from DJing will show you that it is unique, but it's probably closest to jazz, in that a jazz quartet or a jazz musician even will go up on stage and perform without knowing where it's going to end. And I think there's an element of that about DJing as well, isn't there? So thank you, Kesha. It is an art form, I agree with you. And thank you for the kind compliment that we've helped you along the way there. You've certainly given more than your fair share back to us. It's been a joy having you in our community all these years. So Tim says, I don't think it's about having all the music in the world. I think making people feel good and hyping them up with your set is something you can't buy and is something you can't have AI take over right now. Yes, that's what I was saying, isn't it, Tim? It's the transfer of energy from DJ booth to dance floor. You better bring the energy. You better bring a really good why. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? Because if you don't bring that, the dance floor has got nothing to latch onto. And so I agree completely with you there, Tim. Thank you very much. If you've joined this podcast late, then the question we're answering here is, how can we protect our craft and restore the value of professional DJing? How can we position DJs as skilled artists and professionals who create experiences rather than simply people who push buttons? What could we do as an industry and as individual DJs to make the profession respected again? So we're going to carry on reading out some of the thoughts of our fantastic live audience here. Matthias says, in part, I agree with John, who asked the question. He's right in the diagnosis of the status quo, but the paradigm has partly shifted. The question is, what are you going to do about it? As in us, what are us DJs going to do about it? Matthias says, honestly, AI will catch up with creatives' output. I think the chance lies in being a human interface to your guests. Maybe being a non-perfect human is the basic advantage. Yes, maybe it is. I do believe that being the human in the room is the way forward. Ultimately, there have always been tools to help us do what we do, right? There have always been tools. AI is just a particularly good one. But the humans still have to direct the show. And if the people who are having the show put on for them cannot tell the difference between the human directing it and the AI that's provided the tools for the human to do it, assuming that AI continues to wheedle its way into DJing in all the different ways it has, and like it or not, it is wheedling its way into DJing, then it's up to the DJ, it's up to the human to raise their game. So it's clear what the extra 20% the humans bring to the table to the 80% that AI can do, or that a lesser DJ can do. It's clear what that 20% is. That's what is going to separate great DJs from competent DJs as technology becomes better and better at doing the basics. So I love that. So thank you for that. So Pat says, over the long years of DJing, I started in 1978. I've always tried to stay ahead of the curve by trying to be unique, by not only reading the crowd, but by guiding it, say birthdays, weddings, etc. I create special tracks for those people. I use AI to make songs with these people's names in, or with occasions that mean something. I make it really special for them this way. I know that I'm at the end of my career, and I have taken your courses to stay current. I still try to push myself. Oh, well, thank you for that, Pat. And look, using AI to make individual personalized songs for your wedding guests and for your birthday people, I think that's fantastic. I love that. There's an advert on the radio here. We have a TV company called UME, U-M-E-E. They provide like fibre broadband and TV here in Gibraltar. And they've got this advert on Radio Gibraltar where it's the usual, get our fibre, it's only £59 and all this. But in the middle it says, super fast UME broadband, and you can just see the AI. You can just see someone typing in the prompt for it. It's so out of place. But hey, but Pat, I'm sure you're doing it a lot better than that. Martin, we don't need to worry about AI. Stephen Wonder, well, I'm not going to make the obvious joke, Stephen, thank you. Says, old school for the old man who knows in and out around the DJ equipment, old and new. New school from the block probably know the basic skills and they know the newest equipment, but they have a lack of knowledge when it comes to good old-fashioned vinyl DJing. But you're never too late to learn, either young or old, because you've got to start somewhere. Well, yeah, of course, new DJs would be absolutely mad to start with 2 turntables and a load of vinyl. The cost, the expense, the time, of course they're not going to start there. But let me tell you something that might also lighten your heart. We have noticed at Digital DJ Tips, some of our best students will start literally with an app on their phone. And then they'll buy a little controller to control that app. And then they'll realize they want a bigger screen and they want quicker search and they want a bigger hard drive. So they'll pair a controller with a laptop. And then they'll think, well, hang on, let's look at what real DJs, and I mean real DJs by the way they think, because I count you all as real DJs. Let's see what real DJs are doing in the DJ booth. And they'll say, well, they don't seem to have laptops. So they'll say, what are they using? And then they'll discover this thing called standalone DJ gear. And so they'll then think, well, I better just look a bit more into the history of this, because I'm now noticing DJs who can scratch. And they're using vinyl, and then they discover digital vinyl. And then they think, oh, damn it, you know what? I'm going to buy some music and I'm just going to try and learn to scratch with real vinyl. I'm going to learn to do it without a computer or without any help at all. So they go literally backwards, because me and my generation, we learned on crappy belt drive turntables, then on Technics turntables. Then DVS came along and we thought, wow, that's cool. Then CDJs came along and we thought, even better. Then USB drives and we're like, wow, we can share music, we can get everything. USB, forget the CDs. And then the laptop came, hang on, we can do it all for a fifth of the amount of money. And then it's like, did you know you could do that on an iPad? And then it's like, wow, man, we can do the whole thing on a phone. So we literally went in the other direction to the way our best students are going. And that shows there are people who care about the craft, Stephen. It shows there are people who respect the roots and who want to learn everything. I think that a lot of this comes, and this is something I worry about a little bit, a lot of this comes from people who've had a foot in each camp, because ultimately 2 types of technology are derivative. A DJ controller is basically a digital copy of analog gear, right? You get 2 turntables where you put real records on, and you get a mixer which, using electrical current, mixes between the 2, and that goes off to analog amplifiers and speakers. DJ controllers come along and they digitize all of that. And so now you've got a little box that has copied the paradigm. It's got the two spinny things. It's got the bit in the middle with the crossfader on it, but it's all digital. And that goes off to the speakers, which, by the way, have got digital processors and a digital this and digital that. I remember both because I professionally use both. So I, as a teacher, and Digital DJ Tips as a business, as a DJ school, has kind of built its reputation and built its ability to teach on me knowing the old way and being able to talk to you firsthand about it, while also completely embracing the new way. Because people come into the new way afresh who don't have a foot in the old way and a foot in the new way, don't have that experience, and so they don't trust anything that they get secondhand about it, which is why I'm in a good position to try and help them pass that, because I've been there. But also, a lot of them end up going back there themselves, which you just talked about. Let me give you another example of how technology essentially copies something that was there before. I think about my kids who are 13 and 15, and they remember the world before AI, because AI has only been the last 3 years. My kids completely remember, obviously they don't remember the world before the internet, but they remember the world before AI, and they talk about it in the same way I talk about the world before the internet, before digitization. And so I think my kids are going to have a foot in each camp when it comes to AI, and they're going to talk to their kids in the same way I talk to them about, oh, you know, there used to be 3 television channels and no internet. The internet used to scream down the phone at you, come on, Phil, time to go to bed. And so I think they're going to be the same with AI, but there's some value in remembering firsthand the way things used to be done. So let's just leave that one sitting out there. More comments then on this question. This is from Richard. I've been DJing for a while. It's all about timing. It's all about reading the room. It's all about knowing the right track to get the people up and get them staying up. And it's picking that right track at the right time. There's no point in playing a nice track if only 2 or 3 people are in the room. You've got to know when to do it. I totally agree. Part of the joy of DJing, in fact, most of the joy, is programming. And if you DJ regularly, say at the same place every week, you soon realize that sometimes a track will absolutely slay the dance floor, and at other times you think, why didn't it work this week? So you start looking at what you played before it, and you start realizing there's a lot of art to this as well as science. I would argue that AI can do the science bit, but not the art bit. When I used to DJ in the 90s, says Mike, or when I used to go to clubs in the 90s, says Mike, we didn't know who the DJs were. We were just interested in the music. Yes, but if the DJs were doing a good enough job so you didn't have to know who they were, I guess it was probably working, wasn't it? Benedict says, I always try and show how much fun I'm having when I'm DJing by dancing and smiling. I love DJing and I always try to show that. I don't think an AI can do that. An AI certainly cannot do that, can it? So you learn from each other. Yes, thank you for that. A few of you are saying you learn from each other. So here is a nihilistic, or certainly a radical view on all of this. From Sebastian, I believe that AI will change the DJ world completely. If you think about it from the perspective of the customer, a lot or most of them will use AI in combination with streaming instead of spending around €1,000 for a DJ. You see it already with younger people. Oh yes, oh you certainly do. A DJ who is going to be hired for an event has to be damn good. I think you're completely right there. And so will people still pay to go and see DJs though? And I think they will, but the DJs are going to have to be very good. And they're going to have to be good at things that a lot of older DJs don't want to do. Social media, networking, having a brand, having a thing they do which makes them unique. They'll probably be making music. Maybe their technology will be on view on big screens so people can see what they're doing. You know, maybe DJ gear will continue to morph until it's more like someone playing a guitar or playing drums. They can, you know, a guitarist can stand there and play a guitar. You can see what they're doing. There's no mystery to it. DJing has gone from being something you do on 2 decks where everyone could see what you were doing. It was obvious, and if the needle jumped, it all went wrong. To being something which, frankly, people say they're just pushing buttons. Why has that happened? Because the stuff that's happening, whether it's clever or not, has become obscured. Maybe DJing will become more visceral, where electronic music is controlled in a way which is not obscured. I'm just crystal balling it here, but maybe that's what has to come back. Maybe that jeopardy, the jeopardy of playing on vinyl, needs to come back in a digital format. Who knows? But thank you for that. So Darren says, while DJing is an art form, do these 1-hour sets kind of suppress people's real talent? Yes and no. You can't really take a room on a journey in an hour, although an hour is quite a long time. However, you can certainly perform a routine that will have people's jaws dropping. You can do that in 5 minutes. So Yeah, it's very, very interesting debates here for certain. We're going to kind of wind this up now, folks. It's been better than I thought, as always. Thank you very much for your comments on this question. And we're certainly not answering it here, but we certainly got some views to think about, haven't we? Terence, to start to round this up, says AI does not have swag. AI does not have a dynamic personality. We as DJs must interact with our dance floor. We get to use the mic at the right times. That's also very true. Thank you for bringing that up, Terence. We can talk to our audiences. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe that will become more important. As Chris Martin of Coldplay sang once, God gave me style and gave me grace. God put a smile upon my face. Can AI do that? I doubt that. And maybe that humanity is where it lies. Well, what a topic. Thank you so much to our fantastic students who were there as we recorded the podcast this time. That was the last podcast for this academic year. We now close the studio and we will be back at the very end of August, beginning of September with our new term and with our new set of podcasts to run for another 10 months. However, we have two very special podcasts which will be queued up over the next 6 weeks or so, because Steve Canuetto and myself, the two head tutors here at Digital DJ Tips, sat down a few days ago and we reminisced about our time before Digital DJ Tips, before the last 16 years, which have taken up our lives completely since we started this school. And we talked about our professional careers in the music industry and as DJs, sharing stories, having a laugh about what we got up to when we were half the age we are now. So do listen out for that one. But then, in the second half of that special recording, we talk about what's happened since. We talk about 16, 17 years of this DJ school. And again, we've got some fantastic stories to share because things have changed a lot since back in 2010. We clicked record on our iPhones and recorded the very first of our videos for YouTube back in the day when YouTube itself was only a couple of years old. So listen out for that special podcast duo over the summer months. All that's left for me to say is thank you very much for being with us for this last academic year. And we will see you again fresh with some more live shows in September. Meanwhile, get good, get out there, make your summer moments. Until next time, bye-bye.